The Survival of Marvin Baines, Chapter 1. Marvin Baines felt happy. He was smiling, and he walked fast. He always walked fast when he was happy. He couldn't help it, ever since he was a little kid. He swung his arms back and forth and whistled. He whistled, "You Are My Sunshine." He liked the song. Then he quickly switched to "Don't Fence Me In," something he believed in fully. Marvin Baines walked right across the cement patio and stepped onto the grass. "Watch it, buddy." Baines turned to see who was talking to him. No one was in sight. "Careful now." Baines looked again. Still there was no one around him. "I'm sorry, but I can't help it. It's a matter of survival," the voice said. Baines grinned. "What the hell?" he said. If I go, you go. It's that simple." "Jesus Christ," said Baines. He was neither cursing nor praying. "It's the truth," the voice said. "Unfortunately, for both of us, you and me." Baines looked up. He looked down. He looked to the right, to the left. He turned and looked behind him. He looked the other way, this way, that way. He looked everywhere. But he could see no one. No one was around. He stood there all alone. "Wow," said Baines, and that's all he could think to say. "You and me both," said the voice again. "Survival." "Survival?" said Baines. "That's it." "Wow," said Baines. He was grinning again. He couldn't help himself. Wow, wow. He still couldn't think of anything else to say. So he looked about him again. Still no one could be seen. "Don't kill me," said the voice. Baines grimaced. "Who are you?" "If you do, you're killing yourself. It works both ways. Mutual survival, our survival, and it's all in your hands." "Shit," said Baines. He stood there and looked around for a while. Then he began walking, all alone, no one else about him. "Please, please," he heard. Marvin Baines shook his head back and forth in wonder. Then he began whistling "Row, Row, Row Your Boat" as he walked, and he really didn't like the song much either. Martha Baines was not an unattractive woman. Very much so for a woman of 37 who had already given birth to 5 children, 2 girls and 3 boys, the eldest being John, age 12. Nancy, the youngest, was 4. And, hopefully, Nancy would remain the youngest of the Baines children. Father Marvin sure hoped as much anyway. Martha had similar thoughts on the subject. It would appear so, at least. She was quiet most of the time, but when she did talk, usually after 2 or 3 drinks at the frequent social gatherings she and her husband had earlier been accustomed to appearing at, she would invariably let her own thoughts on the subject be known. Once she had completely broken up a friendly social gathering by becoming almost violently angry with a friend of hers who had declared that zero population growth was an ungodly organization. Another time she had burst into tears during a heated argument on abortion. Anyway, Martha Baines finished eating her 3rd sweet roll of the afternoon before she finally went to see why her daughter Nancy was crying so loudly. She picked up the little girl into her arms and soothed her, caressing the girl's cheeks and kissing her face. "I want Daddy," Nancy said. Martha smiled. She squeezed her little girl. "He'll be home soon," she said. "He better be." John Baines, age 12, played basketball with his friends. He liked basketball. He loved it. It was more than just a game to the youngster. He had dreams of playing high school ball and college, maybe even pro. The pass was perfect. John Baines caught the ball squarely and began dribbling toward the basket for an easy layup. A real cinch of a shot. "Steps!" yelled one of the boys on the opposing team. "Steps! Steps!" And all this just as the ball went through the hoop. John Baines was angry. He had made 2 points for his team. "That wasn't steps. That's exactly the way my pa showed me how to make a layup." "Your pa's crazy." The boy began to laugh. John Baines hit his friend squarely in the mouth. The boy fell backwards onto the concrete. Blood began to trickle from his mouth. Jack Nicholson, who would never possess a tolerance for the ribbing his students made concerning his name, hated his job. His 10th grade students just didn't appreciate his jobs at teaching them English, and the pay just was not commensurate to the terrible headaches he regularly brought home from him at night, every night. His love of literature, as Marvin Baines had also once confessed to, and which Jack Nicholson now knew applied equally well to himself, had made him become an English teacher. But the students, with personal problems and hang-ups galore, had forced him to be nothing more than a teenage sitter as versus a babysitter. It was sad but true, tragic but true, comical yet terribly frustrating, even mind-blowing at times. The students copied and cheated and did little work and no homework and fought with each other in class and flirted with each other in class and didn't give a damn about their work and about Jack Nicholson's own hard thought up lesson plans and about Jack Nicholson's right to the heart of the matter comments on the compositions he handed back to them once a week, or even about Jack Nicholson himself for that matter. "Have friends over tonight, darling?" asked his wife as he stepped in the door that evening. "Can't," said Nicholson. "I've got papers I've got to get back tomorrow." And after dinner, Jack Nicholson seated himself in his favorite chair and began to read the paper on the very top of the pile. Pollution, he read. Pollution is a thing that is quite important for all of us on this great planet we call the Earth. It is a big problem and it should be solved very soon, and it should be solved the sooner or the better because it affects us all. It affects you and me and everybody. Nicholson sighed. He felt like vomiting or screaming or both. The bar, Sam's Place, the Preservation Hall of Country Music, where only the classics found themselves at home, was crowded, even though it was not Friday or Saturday night, the only 2 nights of live music in the place. The dance floor was always crowded then, and slippery too, with all the sand the pretty hostess continually poured onto the floor every time the band would stop for a short break. The dancers liked it that way, even though it caused spills every now and then. The worst cause of spills that Marvin Baines could remember, and he did often, was the night he had had 1 beer too many and had attempted to pick up a little blonde sitting in the corner with 3 gal friends. Marvin must have gone down 4 or 5 times minimum that night, on the floor that is. He'd be dancing wildly, his arms flapping all around him, his smile on the lips of his enchanting partner, and suddenly down he'd go. His shoes would hit the sand just right or wrong, and down he'd go, embarrassed as hell, especially the 4th and 5th times, and he hadn't been successful in picking up the lovely blonde either. But the dance floor was empty this particular night. The stools along the bar were all full, as were the tables along the wall. The jukebox blared throughout the dark room, and "White Lightning is the biggest thrill of all," sang Merle Haggard. Marvin Baines listened to Merle Haggard with one ear and old Hank Jensen with the other. Merle Haggard was still singing about the folks of Muskogee, Oklahoma, while old Hank Jensen talked about how he had just lost $10 on the pinball machine in Al's place the night before. "That's a lot of money," said Baines. "You're right," said Jensen. "The damn machine really took you, huh?" "Hell," said Jensen. "Another beer?" "Hell yeah," said Jensen. "2 beers, Sam," said Baines. Sam filled two clean glasses with Samuel Adams on tap and set them on the bar before Baines and Jensen. Marvin Baines rolled the dice. He rolled 2 6s. He set them aside and rolled the remaining 3 dice. This time he rolled 1 6. He handed the 5 dice to Sam. In 2 rolls, Sam only turned up 1 6. "You're lucky tonight, Marv." "Makes up for the last night," said Baines. Sam laughed and walked over to the cash register and rang up the sale, 2 beers on the house. "I walked the line," sang Johnny Cash. "I'll get even with that damn machine tonight," said old Hank Jensen. "Hell if I won't." Marvin Baines went home about 10 o'clock that night. He paused on the lawn to pat Scamper, the family pet, and then he began to whistle "Don't Fence Me In" as he walked from the lawn to his front door. He whistled loudly. He even skipped a little, he was so damned happy, and the little dog jumping up and down at his side trying to lick him on the ear. But still, even though he whistled and skipped and smiled and laughed, still something troubled Baines. Whatever it was right at the very upper levels of his brain, almost on the surface. What it was, he wasn't quite sure. He kept hearing someone say, "Please, please," and something about survival, mutual survival. Marvin Baines' survival.